Give me just a minute while that comes up. Okay, so participants on Team Violet for the plaintiffs and Team Daffodil for the defendant. I'll now introduce Judge Hurst, who is a judge in Douglas and Lincoln counties, who will be presiding today. Judge Hurst. Judge, you're still on mute.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, good afternoon. For some reason, I lost the full screen. And so let me see if I can get you back to full screen. There we go. All right. Not only I, but you will probably have technical difficulties, so I'm sorry about that. And good afternoon. I'll welcome you to my courtroom. This is Division C in Douglas County. And let me call our case for this afternoon and get introduction of the parties. So the court will call 21 CV 303720. This is Dakota Weirs versus Lush Fertilizer Incorporated. And let's get introduction of the plaintiffs and introduce all the parties who will be testifying for the jury, please. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Jasmine Machievich, and I will be delivering the direct examination of Dakota Weirs, the cross-examination of Skylar Weirs, and the plaintiff's closing statements. At this time, I would like to ask your permission for my co-counsel to introduce themselves.
Yes, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Danielle McGowan. Today I'll be delivering the direct examination of Carson Durst as well as the cross-examination of Blake Doncourt.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Ben O'Con, and I will be delivering the direct examination of Dr. Casey Rogers, the cross-examination of Dr. Devin Williams, as well as the opening for the plaintiff team. Thank you.
I would now like permission for the plaintiff's witnesses to introduce themselves.
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Sasad Aguirre. I will be portraying Dakota Weirs for you all today.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Daniel Jones, and I'll be portraying Carson Durst.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. I am Tanner Bertram, and I will be playing the role of Dr. Casey Rogers.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Sorry about that. Good afternoon, Your Honor. Opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Jackson Pagano, and I'm the timekeeper.
All right, Team Violet, thank you for your introduction. Your microphones are having a little bit of static, and so you may want to make sure everybody else's microphone is off when your team is talking, except for your witness and your attorney, okay? And sometimes it helps to get a little closer to the screen as well, but we'll see how it goes as we go forward. So any further introductions, Team Violet?
No further introductions, Your Honor.
Great, thank you. And would defense introduce themselves for the court and the jury, please?
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Shayda Zarin, and on behalf of my client, Lush Fertilizers. Today, I'll be presenting the defenses and conducting the direct examination of Blake Doncourt and the cross-examination of the plaintiff. Permission from my fellow co-counsel to introduce themselves.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Ajitha Kanoju, and on behalf of my client, Lush Fertilizers, today I will be presenting the defense's opening and conducting the direct examination of Skylar Wise and the cross-examination of Carson Durst.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Mallory Camberos, and on behalf of my client, Lush Fertilizers, today I will be presenting the defense's closing arguments and conducting the direct examination of Dr. Devin Williams and the cross-examination of Dr. Casey Rogers. Permission for our witnesses to introduce themselves.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Ella Frick, and I am Blake Doncourt.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. I'm Weston Nicholson, and I'll be portraying Skylar Weirs.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Abigail Couillard, and I am Dr. Devin Williams.
Thank you, Team Daffodil. And are there any other introductions you need to make? Okay. With that, let me do some preliminary matters for the court. First of all, I want to remind you all that there are not to be any recordings of this hearing other than the ones being made by the Bar Association. Information, I want to inform the teams and the gallery members that the Colorado Bar Association may be taking photos or screenshots, and that by agreeing to participate in the tournament, you have agreed to allow those to occur. I'll just ask anybody in the gallery observing today to make sure that you are not assisting in the competition or in any way participating with the teams during their presentation. I want to remind everybody that we will not be taking a recess. The only recess we would take would be in the event of an emergency. And if there is an emergency, please notify us immediately with regard to any need to stop the proceeding. I believe we've all reviewed the rosters and the parties, and there are no conflicts. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and proceed to swearing in the teams, the gallery, the scoring panelists, and the witnesses. So if I could get the teams and the witnesses to please turn on your cameras and raise your right hand for me. All right, thank you. So first of all, team members, all team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and the rules of the mock trial competition? And you can shake your head up and down for yes or side to side for no. And I saw only yeses. All right, thank you. Witnesses, could you please raise your right hands for me? Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony that you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial? Shake your head for yes. And all right, I saw only yeses. Thank you. Gallery members, although I cannot see you, including teachers, attorneys, coaches, and family members and friends, please promise to represent yourselves as positive role models and behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial. And remember my admonishment not to be involved in the proceeding as the kids go forward. And scoring panelists, would you join me on the screen and raise your right hands for me, please? Thank you. Good afternoon. Scoring panelists, do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
I do.
Great. I got 2 nods and 1 I do. Thank you. All right. With that, I am prepared to take up any pre-trial matters that we might have proceeding forward. And let's go with plaintiff counsel for Dakota Weirs. Any pre-trial matters?
Yes, Your Honor. We would request that we be able to share our exhibits on the screen. Although I don't know what to say. As well as we would request that any time left over during our closing would be reserved for rebuttal.
All right, so it sounds like two issues. Thank you. And on behalf of defendant Lush Fertilizer, any pretrial matters and comments on the pretrial request from plaintiff?
Yes, Your Honor. We request that the people in defense request that the stipulated facts of the case be submitted into evidence to assist the jury's understanding of the case. And then we also request that the defense doesn't say this. People request that all extra time from closing statements be reserved for rebuttal.
Okay, and counsel, your web link is a little slow, it sounded like, so maybe do those again just so we can all hear, please. I heard the stipulation on the facts.
Okay. The people in defense request that the witnesses be allowed a copy of the exhibit packets and personal witness statements nearby for expediency's sake.
Okay, anything further?
No further preliminary matters, Your Honor.
Okay, so with regard to the request, I will authorize the exhibits to be shared on screen as long as it does not significantly delay the proceedings. I'll allow plaintiff to reserve time for a rebuttal and closing, and the stipulated facts will be admitted to the record as they are stipulated. And to the extent witnesses need to refer to copies of their reports to refresh their recollection, that would be authorized as long as you request permission to look at them prior. Okay. One thing the court is going to do is give authority for the parties, if they're having technical difficulties, to request the time stop until that difficulty can be corrected. Unless you ask to stop, I'll ask the timekeepers not stop the time unless it's requested and granted. And with that, I'll just turn it over to plaintiff for their opening statement. I believe Mr. O'Cron?
May I proceed?
You may.
This case is all about a high school kid whose dreams of becoming a world-class piano player one day were destroyed when he developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma caused by the defendant's product, Lush Fertilizer. Dakota Wares is 18 years old. He works hard in school, he gets good grades, and he is an active member of his community. You'll learn that he was a member of the National Honor Society, president of his high school student government, and even found the time to volunteer at a local homeless shelter. You will learn that more than anything else, Dakota loved to play the piano. And that when he was just 7 years old, he used to sit on his grandfather's knees, learning about each sound and how each key would feel under his fingers, learning how each chord would come together. He started to take lessons soon after his grandfather passed away and got to a point where he loved it so much that he used to practice several hours a day. He dreamed of becoming a world-class piano player one day. And you will learn that Dakota was well on his way to making those dreams a reality. He had even received a full ride scholarship to Juilliard, one of the finest music conservatories in the world. His dreams were just at his fingertips until a year ago when things began to take a turn. Just before he was about to leave for Juilliard, he began to feel sick all the time. He experienced rapid weight loss, and he was tired constantly. He had chest pain, swollen and painful lymph nodes, and he could not stop coughing. In fact, he was so tired and he was in so much pain that he could not sit at the piano for more than a few minutes, therefore making a recital or performance impossible. He saw countless doctors and underwent one test after another before he was finally diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. You may be asking, how could this happen? How could one young life be changed so drastically, seemingly overnight? Well, you'll hear that in addition to his school, piano, homework, and volunteer work, Dakota also worked at a local landscaping company, where his responsibilities included trimming hedges, cutting lawns, and applying a product called Lush Fertilizer. You will hear that this product was rushed to the market despite evidence that its key component, a bonding agent called Drufo, was carcinogenic. And you will hear that despite knowing that baking or heating its product would remove any risk that it was carcinogenic, Lush's Fertilizer CEO chose not to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our job to prove to you that the defendant, Lush Fertilizer, was negligent and caused Dakota's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And we must prove these things to you by the preponderance of the evidence, which simply means that they are more likely true than not. We will meet our burden by calling 3 witnesses. First, you will hear from Dakota Wares. He will tell you about his life before and after he was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He will explain to you that despite working with Lush Fertilizers for almost 4 years, nobody ever told him that it was carcinogenic, and nobody ever told him that he might be putting his life in danger by simply going to work. Second, you will hear from Carson Durst, who is a product development engineer on the research and development team at Lush Fertilizer for 4 years. He will tell you that Lush Fertilizer executives know that Drufo may be linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but decided to keep that information away from the public. It did nothing to make sure it was safe for the public. And lastly, you will hear from Dr. Casey Rogers, who holds a PhD in agriculture and entomology. Dr. Rogers will explain how Drufo was rushed to the market without sufficient studies to its safety. He will describe to you that how he performed his own study that led to his conclusion that prolonged exposure to Drufo causes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he will believe this to a high degree of scientific probability. Ladies and gentlemen, at the conclusion of this case, after you have heard all the facts and the evidence, my co-counsel, Jasmine Michievich, will again walk you through the facts and the evidence and explain to you why Lush Fertilizers was negligent in rushing Drufo to the market without an appropriate warning label. And she will ask you to find Lush Fertilizers liable for causing Dakota's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. And defense, Mr. Lemon.
Lush Fertilizer is falsely accused of negligence. The plaintiff is trying to put their own actions onto a company. This case is about the irresponsibility of the plaintiff. We are here today to prove that Lush Fertilizer is not negligent and has performed every duty they were required to. At age 14, the plaintiff was hired to work at a gardening company. Due to their age, they were given the responsibility of spreading the fertilizer. What they were also given was a verbal instruction to wear a mask and protective gear. They were warned, both verbally and on the packaging, but did not comply. In addition to Lush Fertilizers, they had mentioned that they use various other fertilizers and lawn chemicals. The only reason the plaintiff has chosen to attack Lush specifically is because of documents seen on TV falsely accusing Drufo of being dangerous. The plaintiff did not wear a mask and has based their entire case on hearsay. To prove negligence, there are 4 requirements. 1, prove that Drufo was manufactured by Lush Fertilizers. 2, prove that Lush Fertilizer did not exercise reasonable care and that the product was not used improperly. 3, the defendant was an expected user of the product. And lastly, prove that the plaintiff's behavior was not unreasonable. Opposing counsel will fail to do this as the plaintiff acted unreasonably by not wearing a mask. What will be proven is that Lush is not at fault. Today we will call the first witness, Blake Doncourt. Ms. Doncourt is the Chief Executive Officer of Lush Fertilizer. She is here today to establish that her company is not part of the cause of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. She has gone through the process needed to have this fertilizer be safe. She has taken the steps needed to make sure that there are no carcinogens, to be able to prove that Lush has nothing to do with the plaintiff's cancer. Next, we have Skylar Wires. Mr. Wires is an investigative journalist. He is an expert in modern agritech. He has the knowledge, he has the skill to prove her points in journalism based on Rule of Evidence 702. The Rule of Evidence 702 is when an expert witness is not needed to hold a specific degree, training, certificate, accreditation, or membership in a professional organization. An expert is qualified with knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education. He is here today to show that Lush has nothing to do with Drufo causing non-Hodgkin lymphoma. He has spent a lot of time researching Drufo. He has looked at different ways that the cancer could have been caused. Wires is also the twin of the plaintiff. Lastly, we have Dr. Devin Williams. Ms. Williams leads the toxicology research and development labs at Lush. She's also the outgoing chair of the company's ethics community. She has been in toxicology for 7 years. Dr. Williams is an expert in toxicology. She has the knowledge from having 2 PhDs. She has the skill, and she has the training, she has the experience, and she has the education needed. Members of the jury, today you will choose either the plaintiff who has neglected what was needed, the plaintiff was aware of this, or the defense who will show you today that Lush has no part in the plaintiff's negligence. The defense will prove beyond a preponderance of evidence, which is a 50% chance that Drupa was not carcinogenic and Lush is not negligent. Today, we hope that you, the jury, will choose the defense.
Thank you for your opening statements. And plaintiff, are you ready to present your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor, we would like to call Mr. Weirs to the stand.
All right. Mr. Weirs, just remind you that you're under oath and you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Please state your name for the record.
Dakota Weirs.
Mr. Weirs, can you tell the jury why you're here today?
I'm here because I developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma after using Lush Fertilizer's product in my job for years.
When were you first diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Well, I was first diagnosed a little over a year ago, right before I was set to leave for Juilliard.
Can you tell us about your symptoms?
I started feeling chest pains. I have frequent chills. I have horribly swollen lymph nodes. I experienced rapid weight loss.
Did you see a doctor about your symptoms?
I did. I saw so many doctors, but after what felt like countless doctor's visits and tests, I was finally diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Tell us about your life before you developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. How did you spend your time?
I spent my time doing so many things, it's almost hard to count. I loved school. I loved going and participating in as many extracurriculars as I could find. I loved volunteering, but more than anything else, I loved playing the piano. I picked it up from my late grandfather, and I've really always felt a special connection to it. Whenever I can, I try to fit in practice sessions in between studying and volunteering.
Did you win any awards or competitions for your music?
I did. I was featured in a number of recitals that I won, and people would come from all over the state just to hear me play. But my most proud achievement is earning a full ride scholarship to Juilliard.
Can you tell us what Juilliard is?
I might be a little biased here, but Juilliard is the best music conservatory in the world, and it's located in the beautiful city of New York with some amazing alumni like Nina Simone and composer John Williams.
Mr. Weirs, what else did you do before you were diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Well, outside of volunteering and extracurriculars, I would work at a small locally owned landscaping business to try to raise some money for school.
Where were you working when you were diagnosed?
I was working at Havens Landscaping, which is a small locally owned landscaping business.
And how long had you been working there?
Well, by the time I was diagnosed, I'd been working there for about 4 years.
What were your job responsibilities like?
Well, since when I joined Havens Landscaping, I was about only 14. I was primarily responsible for spreading seed and fertilizer rather than working heavy machinery.
Did you like your job, Mr. Weirs?
I loved my job. I loved being able to work with my hands. I loved being able to go outdoors every day. I love the fact that my job had all sorts of interesting clientele, so I could see new parts of my city that I've never even had the chance to see.
In their opening statement, Lush Fertilizer's attorney claimed that you did not follow the safety instructions on Lush Fertilizer's label. Is that true?
That's not true at all. The label only made some slight suggestions on how to use the product or what might happen if it got into your eyes. There wasn't anything about how the product could actually be dangerous.
Your Honor, I'm showing opposing counsel Plaintiff's Exhibit 1. Permission to share it on the screen.
You may.
Mr. Weirs, do you recognize what has previously been marked as Plaintiff's Exhibit 1?
Excuse me for a moment while I retrieve my exhibits, please. Yes,
What is it?
it's a Lush fertilizer bottle label.
Is this a fair and accurate photo of the label of Lush fertilizer that you used during your job as a landscaper?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I'd like to offer Plaintiff's Exhibit 1 into evidence.
All right. Is there any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 1 will be admitted.
Your Honor, permission for co-counsel to publish Plaintiff's Exhibit 1 to the jury.
They may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Weirs, did you take any safety measures while using Lush fertilizer?
No, I didn't, but nothing was required by my job. My boss might occasionally suggest that I wear a mask while using chemicals, but it was so hot, it would be almost impossible to breathe when I was working. We were also technically supposed to wear long sleeves and pants while working with the fertilizer, but nobody around me was wearing long sleeves or pants, so I didn't really see it as a requirement.
Did you ever get in trouble for not covering your face or the rest of your body while working with the fertilizer?
No, I didn't get in any trouble, and as far as I know, nobody else got in trouble either. So it really felt like nobody thought this fertilizer could be actually dangerous.
So did you have any reason at all to believe that using Lush fertilizer could cause harm to your health?
No, as you can see on the label, there's nothing about how this fertilizer could be dangerous or anything like that. And I never got the impression that anybody I worked with thought this fertilizer could be dangerous.
Mr. Weirs, can you please read the first active ingredient on the label for the jury?
Yes, Drufo.
Did you know what Drufo was when you were using Lush fertilizer?
No, I had no idea. If I did, I would never even have gone near this stuff.
Mr. Weirs, does the Lush fertilizer label in Exhibit 1 use the word carcinogen anywhere in the ingredient list?
No, it doesn't.
Does the label tell you that you must wear a mask while using Lush fertilizer?
No,
Does it tell you what might happen if you don't wear a mask while using Lush fertilizer?
no, not anywhere.
Does the label tell you anything about what might happen to you if you use Lush fertilizer?
It just says it would irritate my eyes if it got into my eyes.
And Mr. Weirs, to reiterate, when did you first start exhibiting symptoms of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Well, I first started exhibiting symptoms a little over a year ago, right before I was about to set out for Juilliard.
And how has having non-Hodgkin's lymphoma impacted your life?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I have horrible symptoms. I have swollen lymph nodes and chest pains and severe chills, but more than anything, it's prevented me from being able to sit at the piano bench for 20 minutes. It'll bruise me if I sit for too long.
Did you end up accepting your scholarship to Juilliard?
No, I was unable to because of my condition. The school has allowed me to defer my scholarship for a year, but I know my condition isn't going to get any better.
Is there a cure for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
No, I've been informed that there is no cure, so I'll have to live like this for the rest of my life.
What do you want out of this lawsuit, Mr. Weirs?
It's really hard to say what I want. More than anything, I wish I could just find a cure and go back to school. I wish I could go back to volunteering. I wish I could go back to playing the piano, but I know none of that is going to happen. I guess I just want to hold Lush Fertilizer responsible for what they did to me and make sure that they can't do it to anybody ever again.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Weirs, you are in court today because you believe that Lush Fertilizer is negligent.
Okay, hold on. We're having some technical issues. So maybe a little closer to the screen and make sure your microphone is not obstructed, okay? Go ahead.
Can you hear me now, Your Honor?
A little better.
Okay. Mr. Weirs, you're in court today because you believe that Lush fertilizer is negligent, correct?
I couldn't quite hear you, but if you said that I'm in court because I believe Lush fertilizer caused my cancer, yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a little better. It's just
Could I switch? Do I have permission to switch to another computer, Your Honor?
If you think that would
And
help,
request time to be stopped while I figure out these technical difficulties.
sure. As long as it's quick, you can go ahead and switch computers and we'll know. Okay,
I just wanted to clarify. Can you guys hear me better now?
Yes.
it seems a
Sorry
little
about
better.
Sorry
And
about
thank you for can resume. Go ahead.
All right, sorry about that. Mr. Wires, you're in court today because you believe that Lush fertilizer is negligent, correct?
That is why I'm here, but going forward, can I please ask that you pronounce my name Weirs? It is sort of jarring for me.
Mr. Weirs, I apologize.
Thank you.
And you believe that you are not responsible for any charges of negligence yourself?
I believe the majority of the blame should be on Lush Fertilizer for putting a possible rushed product in their fertilizer, yes.
Now let's move on to your landscaping career. You worked at Haven Landscaping, correct?
That is where I worked.
And for how long?
I'd worked there for about 4 years before I was too sick to return.
Your boss always told you to wear protective gear when working with fertilizers, like Lush, correct?
My boss might have occasionally
A yes or no answer will suffice.
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. I would like to ask permission for my witness to answer the question in its entirety.
All right, any response to the objection?
I was just asking him I was just clarifying really straight up if his boss asked him to wear protective gear.
Okay, well, this is cross-examination and you have the right to control the examination. Try not to speak over the witness and ask questions of yes or no if possible. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Continuing on. Mr. Weirs, you believe Lush fertilizer is the sole reason for your illness, correct?
I know Lush Fertilizer and its product Drufo is the sole cause of my non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
So Drufo is the reason.
I would say the fertilizer is the reason, but Drufo is one of the many contributing factors.
Let the record show that you have a clean and unmarked copy of what has previously been marked as Exhibit 1.
Yes.
Mr. Weirs, could you please identify what this piece of evidence is?
As I've previously stated, it's a Lush Fertilizer bottle label.
Could you please refer to under the user safety recommendations and read out loud the first 2 sentences, please?
Yes, the first 2 sentences. As with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. Use of a respirator or N95 mask is recommended. Follow manufacturer's instructions for cleaning/maintaining personal protective equipment.
Does this label clearly state that protective gear should be used while using the product?
It recommends it, but certainly it doesn't say anything about anything being required, so I feel it should be a bit more clear.
And in addition to this label, you were explicitly told by your boss to wear protective gear, correct?
Over the 4 years, maybe once or twice at the start, I was told to wear these protective gears, but as I said, many people around me didn't wear anything, and since I was only 14 at the time, I thought they should lead the way.
So you didn't wear protective gear?
At the time, I wasn't exposed to anybody who did, so no, I did not.
But were the other workers working with the fertilizer?
Absolutely.
I thought did they not simply work with large machinery?
Other workers may have worked with large machinery, but there are certainly other workers working the fertilizer with me.
And the workers that were working on the fertilizer did not wear protective gear as well?
I don't believe so.
And have you been the only one diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's?
I don't see how that's exactly relevant to our case today, but I suppose if I must give an answer, I think I am, yes.
So regardless if you've seen the safety recommendations on the label Exhibit 1, you still heard your boss he still told you to wear protective gear?
He might have mentioned it as I have said, he might have mentioned it once or twice at the start.
Did you not wear protective gear because it was more convenient or other factors?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
I'm asking him for the reasoning behind wearing the gear, if it was more convenient, if there was other factors involved. It's a different section. I'm just clarifying.
Any follow-up on that response?
Your Honor, my witness has already extrapolated on this question in prior questioning by opposing counsel, and I would request that we move on.
Okay, so try to avoid asking repetitive questions unless they're for clarification. So I'll sustain it in part, but you can clarify why or why he did not follow his boss's instruction.
Okay, thank you. Would you have done things differently if you had known Lush caused non-Hodgkin's?
Absolutely. If I had known that Lush could be linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, I would never have even gone near this stuff. I would have requested to be moved to somewhere where I didn't have to work with the fertilizer like my sister. Or my brother, sorry.
Sorry, continue.
No, that's the end of my...
Okay. However, as someone who has worked with fertilizers for a while, would you agree that protective gear is necessary for any fertilizer?
I'm not sure I quite understand the question. Are you saying that for you to work with the fertilizer, you would have to use this protective gear?
I mean, working with any fertilizer or highly chemical substance, would you say that protective gear would be necessary?
I would say fertilizer can be in many different forms, such as manure. So I don't know if every single fertilizer would be the same.
Would you wear protective gear for manure?
For manure, other than to keep it out of my eyes and to keep myself from getting manure on me, I would not.
Just like the label had mentioned.
Just the label mentioned for me to not wear protective equipment?
No, the warnings and about the masks, like it was mentioning the protective gear.
Oh, I would not have worn a mask, certainly.
You also mentioned that the label on the fertilizer had the ingredients, but no warnings, correct?
As I've mentioned, it had some slight suggestions on how to use the product, but no explicit warnings.
Please refer to Exhibit 1 again that has already been submitted into evidence. Does it or does it not list the possible injuries under the title hazards?
If I may respond to that, hazards is different than warnings. There are hazards that come with everything, ma'am.
How do you believe that hazards are different than warnings?
Objection, Your Honor. This is outside the scope of the case, and the counsel is asking the witness for an opinion that is not relevant to what is being testified or what is being addressed here today.
Response?
I was just letting the witness answer because before he was saying that hazards were different than warnings, so I was just clarifying and setting a sort of foundation for the questions that are coming up.
All right. Any further response?
No, Your Honor, but I would ask that we move on from a line of questioning that is not relevant to the case and address the issue at hand, which is the fact that Lush fertilizer caused my client's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Okay, I'll allow the question is within the line of the scope of the direct with regard to injury that he sustained, and in particular, the exhibit was admitted, so I think it is reasonable to be inquired upon. You can go ahead.
Mr. Weir, so you think that hazards and warnings are two different meanings?
Yes, as with any two different words, I suspect that they are two different words for a reason, ma'am.
But they both instigate some sort of danger, correct?
Well, there can be danger in everything. There can be hazards in everything. If you drink too much water, that is a hazard, but that is not a warning.
Back to Exhibit 1.
Yes.
Does it or does it not recommend taking proper safety measures to ensure the consumer's health?
I'm not sure where you're citing. Could you please direct me?
Above the user safety recommendations.
Oh, the first aid and in eyes columns?
Yes, sir. And below the user safety recommendations about the mask.
Yes.
So this label did have warnings and even ways to prevent possible injuries. A yes or no answer will suffice on this question.
No, this label did not have any warnings. The only thing that it had was what to do if you got anything in your eye. It had some cautions. It has some, as you might have said, hazards.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Mr. Weirs, how old were you when you first started working at Havens Landscaping?
As I said, I was only 14, just trying to put myself through school.
And did you have any awareness of what could happen to you if you use Lush fertilizer?
No, as you could see on the label or anybody else telling me anything, there wasn't anybody that was even halfway concerned about this fertilizer.
Did the label say that any sort of precautionary measures were required when using the product, or did it simply recommend them?
As I have made clear to the opposing counsel, there is some recommendations.
And Mr. Weirs, did Lush Fertilizer's label communicate in any way that the product could affect your health?
No, it didn't communicate that in any way aside from some slight direction on what might happen if it got into your eyes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Weir. You can step down. And plaintiff, your next witness.
Your Honor, the plaintiff side would like to call Mr. Durst to the stand.
All right, Mr. Durst, just to remind you, you're still under oath and you may proceed.
Please state your name for the jury.
Carson Durst, spelled D-U-R-S-T.
Why are you here today, Mr. Durst?
So I'm here today because I believe I can give my own personal opinion that Drufo is in fact carcinogenic and that Lush Fertilizer knew about this.
What is your educational background?
So I graduated from Arizona State University with a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering.
Where are you currently employed?
I am currently employed as the head of the research and development team at Terra's Greenery.
Can you tell me about your occupation history before working at Terra's Greenery?
Yes, actually, before working at Terra's Greenery, I worked at Lush Fertilizer for 4 years.
And how did you find that job?
So my job started as an internship at Lush Fertilizer, and 3 months into the internship, I actually got promoted to a full-time product development engineer working for Lush.
Did you meet the qualifications for your promotion?
I assure you I met the qualifications for my promotion. I was working at a higher level than all of my fellow coworkers.
What were your responsibilities as a product development engineer at Lush Fertilizer?
My responsibilities were to work on the production and testing of new fertilizers.
Were you required to apply your degree in chemical engineering in your work on the research and development team at Lush Fertilizer?
Absolutely. I not only needed my degree at Lush Fertilizer, but also at Terra's Greenery, working in the same stuff.
Your Honor, we would like to offer Mr. Durst as an expert in agricultural chemical testing.
All right, any objection or voir dire?
No, Your Honor.
There being no objection to your offer as expert in that area, I'll allow it.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, permission for a constructive sidebar.
Say that again.
Permission for a constructive sidebar.
All right.
Mr. Durst signed a non-disclosure agreement with Lush Fertilizer, which prohibits him from disclosing information about his work at Lush Fertilizer. Because this disclosure of information is essential for the jury to understand Mr. Durst's expert opinions, we ask that the court order Mr. Durst be permitted to discuss his work and any information he gained at Lush Fertilizer that is relevant to his expert opinions.
All right, counsel, any response on that sidebar request?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, as long as it's been previously disclosed, I'll allow you to do that. And that's subject to any cross-examination that may result.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Durst, during your research, did you come to any conclusions about the safety of Drufo?
Yes, it is my own opinion and conclusion that Drufo is in fact carcinogenic.
What did you rely on in coming to your conclusion?
So there were a few things that brought me to my conclusion, but where my suspicions about Drufo started was actually a study I found from England saying that a certain chemical compound in Drufo was actually carcinogenic in rats.
Were you able to find any studies that tested whether the chemical compound had any adverse effects on humans?
So I was not able to see or find any studies on if the chemical compound was harmful in humans, but that's because it's quite simply unethical to test these types of things on humans. So you're not going to find very many studies.
What did you do with this information?
So with this information, we'd put them in our research notebooks, and all of the research notebooks from all the members of the research and development team would be compiled into a bigger report and sent up to senior management.
Mr. Durst, after being sent to senior management, did Jerry Langley order any new studies?
So yes, Jerry Langley was the head of the product management of the research development team, and Jerry did in fact order a new study specifically on if Drufo was carcinogenic in humans.
When did she order this new study to be done?
Jerry ordered the second study on Drufo in September of 2003.
Your Honor, permission to share Exhibit 4 on the screen for yourself, opposing counsel, and the witness to refer to.
You may do so subject to cross-examination and admission of the exhibit.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Durst, do you recognize this document?
Why, yes, this is the email that Jerry sent us ordering the study if Drufo was carcinogenic in humans.
Is this a fair and accurate copy of this email?
Yes, it is.
At this time, we would like to admit Exhibit 4 into evidence.
All right, is there any objection to Exhibit 4?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 4 will be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Permission to publish to the jury?
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Durst, did Ms. Langley explain why she wanted a new study?
Ms. Langley just explained that she wanted to confirm results with the last study.
Did she explain anything else about her concerns with the original study?
Ms. Langley thought that some of our testing methods needed confirmation.
And what did the team's research find after the second study?
So during the second study, when we came and compiled all of our research, it was some of my coworkers' beliefs that Drufo was in fact carcinogenic in humans, and we even discussed a possible or a link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
How was this information received?
What they said was that the information would be kept in the walls until the final report of the study.
Objection. Hearsay.
Hold on. What's the objection?
Hearsay.
All right. Response?
You can't testify to their response.
Respond.
Technical difficulties. Give me 1 minute.
Your Honor, may I now respond to the objection?
I'll let you respond and then you can come back and give me your rebuttal to it. Okay, go ahead. Response.
Your Honor, these statements are not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, but rather for their effect on the listener to show that Lush Fertilizer was on notice that its product was dangerous.
Okay. Any further response on your objection?
No.
Okay. This witness has been qualified as an expert. So to the extent he's relying on that information and giving an opinion that may help the jury, I'll allow his testimony on a limited basis. And so you can go ahead and answer, okay?
Thank you, Your Honor. Again, Mr. Durst, how was this information received?
So senior management said that they'd keep the information in the company until the final report was published on the study.
Did the official report published by the company mention anything about the potential connection to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
The connection between non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and Drufo was not mentioned once in the study.
Did the official report say anything about the research and development team's findings?
That the research was fair and accurate and a representation of what we did. But I don't think the research or the study included all of our data.
Did the official report accurately summarize your team's research?
No, like I said, it didn't include any of the stuff about our link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, or even the fact that it was carcinogenic.
Mr. Durst, why did you leave Lush Fertilizer?
So I left Lush Fertilizer because right after the report of the study came out, where me and many of my fellow coworkers established our concerns with Drufo being carcinogenic, my performance reviews suddenly started to drop.
How did your job at Lush Fertilizer officially end?
I was forced out of the company in December of 2006.
Mr. Durst, is your testimony today motivated in any way by the pending lawsuit against you?
No, my testimony is not.
Is your testimony today motivated by the circumstances under which you were forced out of Lush Fertilizer?
No, my testimony is only to show my personal opinions on Drufo and just that Lush knew about them.
Thank you, Mr. Durst. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Cross-examination of Mr. Durst.
Mr. Durst, why are you testifying in court today?
Like I said, I'm testifying because I'd like to give my own personal opinion that Drufo is in fact carcinogenic and that Lush Fertilizer knew about it.
Now, is it true you didn't get any job offers after graduation? A yes or no will suffice.
It's true that I didn't have a job immediately after graduation, yes.
And Mr. Durst, how are you related to the Doncourt family?
The Doncourts used to be like family to me.
And is it true that you confided in your friend Charles Doncourt about your lack of employment after graduation?
That is correct.
And it's true you were able to get a job with no experience based on your ties to the Doncourt family? A yes or no will suffice.
So yes, Charles did have his dad help me get the job at Lush Fertilizer as the internship, but the actual job I had full time, I got because I put in hard enough work to be a good member of their company.
So that is a yes, correct?
That is a yes. Like I said, Charles helped me get the internship, but I myself got my full-time job.
And then how did your employment begin at Lush?
So yeah, my employment begun with the internship that I got, and then my full employment begun 3 months after the internship.
Mr. Durst, a yes or no will suffice for this next question. Do you believe you were the most qualified?
I believe I was the most qualified out of my fellow coworkers. Yes, I was working at a higher level than them.
Were you qualified before you started the job?
I think that the internship gave me enough qualifications and understanding to get my full-time job, yes.
Now, is it true you didn't have any experience before getting employed? A yes or no will suffice.
So yes, I didn't have any experience in the agricultural field before the internship, but the internship properly prepared me with the qualifications for my full-time job.
And is it true? It is true that when you got promoted as a product development engineer, others thought you were unqualified?
Some others had issues with my promotion, but I assure you I was working at a higher level, hence why I actually got the promotion.
And a yes or no will suffice for this next question. While researching Drufo, you found that it is not carcinogenic in humans, correct?
So there were no specific studies that said Drufo was carcinogenic in humans, but the company-wide study that we did regarding whether Drufo was carcinogenic in humans or not did not include all of the proper information. So I believe that Drufo is carcinogenic, but the company-wide studies did not say so.
And you've had an issue on your performance reports, right?
So yes, my performance reviews started to suddenly drop, but that was only after I expressed my concerns about Drufo being carcinogenic.
And did you have a problem with these performance reports throughout your career?
I mean, throughout my entire career, there was a little pushback from it, but it was a sudden, super increase in the pushback only after the study was published.
And it's true that you were on probationary status, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. The probation happened after the company, after the company published the study.
And you were relegated to assignments no one wanted?
Yes, that's correct.
And after that, did you or did you not talk to Blake Doncourt about this?
I did bring up my issues with this to Blake Doncourt.
And he refused to intervene, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Blake refused to intervene.
And in your affidavit, you have said that Blake looked over various other Ivy League qualified applicants to hire you. Is that correct?
So Blake looked over other qualifiers for the internship, but the actual hiring was because of my good work.
But he said he has looked over other qualified applicants just to hire you. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct, like I said.
And Jerry Langley was your product manager, and correct?
Yes, Jerry was.
And she was also your direct supervisor.
Jerry was my supervisor, yes.
And did you ever, and were you given the option to work out the problem you were having with Jerry?
I'm sorry, may you please repeat the question?
When were you given the option to work out the problem you were having with Jerry?
I mean, I was told I needed to work out the problem with her.
And after that, you felt betrayed and angry after your conversation with Blake, correct?
I did. My work was still just as good as it was when I joined the company, and the rest of the company didn't believe it. But these performance reviews only dropped after the review was published where I brought up concerns.
And were you angry with the mistreatment?
Yes, I was. I was a good employee of them.
And were you not happy?
I mean, you could say that, yes.
And were you upset over Blake's betrayal?
I was very upset, yes.
And did you apply for another job while still working at Lush?
I did apply for another job. I knew I didn't have a future with the company when they tried to force me out.
And you have a history with the Doncourts, is that right?
That is correct. I did have a history with the Doncourts.
And yet you still applied for a new job?
I did, like I said.
And were you fired?
Yes, I was. I was forced out of the company in December of 2006.
And after you were fired, you started working for Terrace Greenery, correct?
I did work for Terrace Greenery, yes.
Your Honor, those are all the questions. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor, may I proceed?
You may.
Again, Mr. Durst, why did you choose to leave Lush Fertilizer?
Well, like I said, I chose left Lush Fertilizer because my performance reviews only started to drop after me and many of my coworkers expressed our concerns about Drufo being carcinogenic.
Why do you believe your performance was considered subpar?
I believe it was because I expressed my concerns.
Mr. Durst, what kind of tests did you perform at Lush Fertilizer?
Just tests on the safety of Drufo and all of our fertilizers.
And would Lush publish this information in its final report?
So the information that we compiled about Drufo being harmful was not published in the final report.
Thank you, Mr. Durst. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Mr. Durst, you can step down. And your next witness.
Plaintiff calls Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
All right, thank you. And doctor, good afternoon. Just to remind you, you're still under oath.
Yes, Your Honor.
May I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon, Dr. Rogers.
Good afternoon.
Can you please state your name for the jury?
My name is Dr. Casey Rogers, spelled Caseyroggers.
And what is your occupation, Dr. Rogers?
I am currently employed as a professor in the Agriculture and Entomology Department at the University of California at Berkeley.
And can you briefly describe your educational background?
Yes, I received my Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and Chemistry from Colorado State University and my PhD in Agriculture and Entomology from the University of California at Berkeley.
And are you currently teaching any courses at UC Berkeley?
I am. I teach three classes right now. A 101 class called Intro to Horticulture Entomology, a 201 class called Food Crops, which focuses on the history and development of the primary crops that feed the U.S. currently, and an advanced 301 class called Herbicide Selectivity in Action, which focuses on the biochemical effects of herbicides on our crops.
Permission to share my screen to share Exhibit 6 and 7.
Or you may do so subject to them being admitted.
Dr. Rogers, do you recognize Exhibit 6?
I do. Exhibit 6 is a copy of my CV.
And what about Exhibit 7?
Yes, Exhibit 7 is a list of my research publications over the years.
Does your CV accurately set forth your educational and professional work background?
In its entirety, yes.
And does Exhibit 7 accurately and completely list your published work?
Yes.
Your Honor, we'd like to enter Exhibit 6 and 7 into evidence.
All right, is there any objection to Exhibit 6 and 7?
No, Your Honor.
All right, those will be admitted.
Permission to publish to the jury?
You may.
Dr. Rogers, have you published any articles about Drufo?
I have. So as you can see in Exhibit 7, that in 2017, I published an article in Biotechnology Information titled Drufo Toxicity and Carcinogenity, a review of the scientific basis of the European Union assessment. And more recently, in 2019, The Environmentalist published my article, The Evidence of Human Exposure to Drufo, a review.
At this time, we would like to offer Dr. Casey Rogers as an expert in the field of agricultural pesticides, including the human metabolism of pesticides.
All right. Any objection or request for voir dire?
Yes, Your Honor, a brief voir dire.
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, your degrees are in agriculture, entomology, and chemistry, correct?
That is correct.
And the classes you teach are horticultural entomology and herbicide selectivity in action.
Yes.
And you have no certifications in toxicology, the study of poison's effect on the human body, only an interest.
Only an interest, yes.
And you have no medical degree.
I do not have a medical degree, no.
So you have no formal education on how poisons affect the body or even the body in itself.
I have no formal education, but I have been involved in processes that would give me proper opinion to opine on this.
And the study you published in 2017 was simply a review of the EU's decisions, none of your own research, correct?
That is correct. It was a review.
Yes or no will suffice. And the studies you published in 2003, 2011, 2013, and 2019 were specifically related to plants.
Yes.
And the only study of your own research published in relation to the human body was in the 2019 Environmentalist, yes?
That is correct.
So you only have one published study on the human body, yes?
Only the one published study, yes.
And has that study been peer reviewed?
It has not been peer reviewed as of yet.
And you have no formal education on the human body, correct?
Not on the human body, no.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, at this time, I object to the tendering of Dr. Casey Rogers as an expert in the field of the effects of pesticides on human metabolism, as he has no formal education or any peer-reviewed or validated research in the field of toxicology, which is the effect of poisons on the human body. He has no formal experience with the human body, only a reviewing in an interest. Therefore, that is not enough to have him entered as an expert.
Right, thank you. Mr. O'Connor, response and clarification of what level of expertise you're seeking.
Yes, Your Honor. Even though Dr. Rogers does not have a medical license, we have established that through his background in educational training, that he is able to opine on how agricultural chemicals affect the human body. Therefore, I do believe he is qualified to talk about cancer, and specifically or generally in Mr. Ware's.
Okay, well, under Rule 702, his scientific, technical, or experience and specialized knowledge may be helpful to the jury. I'll note that he is not a medical professional, therefore has no expertise in determining how cancer or the body is affected. But you can testify in the area of expertise as requested, and the objection is overruled, but limited based upon that qualification.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, are you being paid for your work on this case?
Yes, I have received nominal compensation on an hourly basis for my time in court today and for the time I spent reviewing records and pertinent scientific literature to reach my opinions in this case.
Has this compensation influenced your opinion in any way?
Absolutely not. I am here to give the jury my opinions based solely on my scientific research and my education, training, and experience, nothing more. I am only being compensated for time I'm taking away from my academic pursuits, nothing more.
Dr. Rogers, why did you decide to research the effects of Drufo?
Drufo first caught my attention when it came onto the market because I believe it was rushed to the market without sufficient studies on its safety to humans because, I mean, the scientific community already knew that Drufo was carcinogenic in rats, and for many years after Drufo was released on the market, I heard reports on the potentially negative effects of the substance, and I wanted to study the chemical to determine any side effects or negative effects that it could have, so I thought it was important to conduct my own study to see if there were any adverse health effects in persons who were exposed to Drufo over long periods of time.
And how did you conduct your study?
So my study had included a control group of people who had never been exposed to Drufo, a group of people who use products containing Drufo on occasion, and a group of people who are exposed to Drufo on a regular, almost daily basis, such as professional farmers and gardeners. And the study monitored the group over a period of years, and the groups who had exposure to Drufo were monitored for various health conditions and compared to that control group.
And what did the study find?
Specifically, the study found that those with prolonged exposure were 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer, as those without exposure, suggesting a strong correlation between exposure to Drufo and cancer.
Dr. Rogers, what did you do with your research findings?
With my research findings as a part of the study, I examined ways to mitigate and prevent exposure to Drufo, and the study measured both the amount of the chemicals that was absorbed by the skin and the amount that ended up in the respiratory system. And from the study, it was clear that those exposed to Drufo were primarily exposed by breathing in the aerosolized product, but they were also exposed through contact with the skin. And based on my findings, I made recommendations for steps that should be taken to reduce exposure and the related risks.
And just quickly going back to your experiment, was there any specific type of cancer related to this experiment?
Yes, my apologies. Could you repeat the question one more time?
And just quickly going back to your experiment, was there any specific type of cancer related to this experiment?
Yes, the majority of those diagnosed with cancer were diagnosed with endocrine and exocrine-based varieties, the latter of which includes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Dr. Rogers, have you come to an opinion on whether Drufo causes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Yes, it is my opinion to a high degree of scientific probability that Mr. Ware's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was caused by prolonged exposure to Drufo.
No further questions. Thank you.
All right. Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Before I begin, may I get an exact time of how much I have left for my timekeeper?
Sure, timekeeper, can you help her out?
You have 2 minutes and 59 seconds left.
Thank you. Dr. Rogers, you started researching Drufo instead of the numerous other chemicals you were worried about because of rumors you heard, correct?
When it had first hit the market, yes, had my suspicions.
And before beginning research, you never requested any of Lush's studies, correct?
Previous, I had never requested any things relating to a Lush fertilizer, yes.
So you never looked into both sides of research before you began study, yes?
Yes.
Yes or no, your study came to the conclusion that Drufo was carcinogenic?
Yes, it did.
Yes or no, that agrees with the impression of Drufo you already had from others?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one more time?
Yes or no, that conclusion agrees with the impression of Drufo you already had from the scientific community?
It did agree that with the opinion that I had that that it was carcinogenic in humans, yes.
And this study was never peer reviewed, was it?
It was never peer reviewed, no.
Included within the 3 groups of study were farmers and gardeners, correct?
Farmers and gardeners were part of the studies that I had observed, yes.
And farmers and gardeners interact with Drufo in very different ways, correct?
Farmers and gardeners would, yes, they would interact with the chemical in different ways.
Gardeners, for example, don't work with crops, correct?
Gardeners don't work with crops, no.
And wouldn't these different types of plants require different chemicals?
Other pesticides and fertilizers would be used in the case of gardeners, but Drufo was still being used in the case of these farmers and gardeners.
Yes or no, did your study account for these environmental differences?
The study accounted for, I'm sorry, could I clarify?
Yes. Yes or no, did your study account for the environmental differences such as the different pesticides used by various groups of study?
It had not accounted for other pesticides that could be involved, but it was primarily Drufo that would be the main cause of these cancerous masses.
For expediency's sake, a yes or no will suffice for all of the rest of my questions. So your study has no way to prove there weren't similarities other than Drufo in the group's environments?
Yes.
So your study does not definitively prove it was Drufo that raised those groups' risk of cancer and not another environmental similarity, correct?
Yes.
Thank you, that is all.
Thank you. Redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Dr. Rogers, one question. When you made recommendations on wearing protective clothing, when were these recommendations made?
The recommendations that I had made in my study were made a year before Dakota had left his fertilization company, meaning Dakota could not have had proper time to heed my warning as a doctor.
No further questions. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Rogers, thank you. You can step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And plaintiff, do you have any more witnesses today?
The plaintiff rests.
Thank you. Defense, are you ready to present your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. We call Blake Duncourt to the stand.
All right, Ms. Duncourt, good afternoon. I want to remind you that you're still under oath.
Okay. Sorry, we're dealing with some technical difficulties in the computer, Your Honor.
All right, we'll give you a minute before time starts to get on. All right, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. Sorry about that.
It's okay. You may proceed.
Good afternoon, Ms. Doncourt. Could you please state your full name and spell the last for the court?
Blake Doncourt, D-O-N-C-O-U-R-T-T.
And where are you currently employed?
I am the Chief Executive Officer of Lush Fertilizers.
And what is Lush Fertilizer?
Lush Fertilizer creates and produces fertilizers for vibrant, lush green grass that also protects the environment and values the safety of our customers.
How long has Lush Fertilizer been operating?
22 years.
Could you explain a little bit of what you donate 10% of your profit to?
Lush donates 10% of our profits to charities that are working to decrease the world's global nitrogen footprint. We also started our own charity that focuses on cleaning the world's most polluted areas.
Has Lush Fertilizer ever received recognition for the impact of their products?
Lush was in the recipients of the prestigious CL Business Sustainability Awards, while I myself have personally been nominated for the United Nations Champions of the Earth Award.
Let's move on to the topic of Drufo. What is Drufo?
Drufo is a bonding agent within our fertilizers that prevents agricultural pollution.
And at any point since the invention and research of Drufo, has Lush's products ever been found dangerous?
No, there has been no valid research to show that Lush's products have ever been dangerous.
What research has been done to ensure the safety of Drufo?
We have conducted in-depth and thorough reviews of Drufo, devoting years and years of research into it and its safety.
Have you seen any reliable sources proving that Drufo is carcinogenic?
I have never seen any scientific evidence showing that Drufo is carcinogenic. Casey Rogers claims to have done some sort of study, but it was never published.
Would you let Drufo go on the market if there were verifiable risks of carcinogenic qualities of it?
If I've seen any verifiable risks in the fertilizer, then I would have never risked putting it on the market.
And why is that?
I would have never allowed our company to put a dangerous product on the market that could possibly hurt people. I'm an avowed environmentalist that cares about the safety of my customers.
Do you by chance have a copy of Exhibit 1 that has already been submitted into evidence near you?
Yes.
Could you identify this exhibit?
It is the Lush fertilizer label.
And did your company make their label?
Yes, we did.
Are the words hazards and safety recommendation present on the label?
Yes, there are.
What do these sections state?
These labels instruct the user on how to properly use the product to best ensure their safety.
Is one of these recommendations to use PPE?
Yes.
Do any of these recommendations specifically mention Drufo?
No, they do not.
And why is there no warning for the use of Drufo in the products?
As Dr. Devin Williams will tell you, our toxicology research and development team found nothing in the product which did not require us to put a warning on our label.
Was this ever reviewed by organizations outside of Lush Fertilizer?
Yes, the EPA approved the sale of Lush fertilizers with this label.
Were there ever any internal complaints about the safety of the product that brought to your attention?
No, I did not see any internal reports, including those Mr. Durst have claimed to have reported.
And who is Mr. Carson Durst?
Carson Durst was a former Lush employee who worked for our research and development team. It was his job to look for dangers in the product.
And were his concerns ever brought up to you?
Never.
Have you ever seen anything where these concerns have been brought up?
No.
What did you do with your email system?
We handed over access to our email system to the plaintiff's lawyers.
And did the plaintiff fully and thoroughly search it?
Yes, they did.
What did they end up finding?
Their search of our computers didn't find anything.
Moving on. If there had been a risk with Drufo, would baking have eliminated that risk?
Yes, if there was any risk.
And why didn't you bake your product?
We are a company that prides itself on being environmentally and economically conscious. We want our product to be as available as to many people as possible. And there also wasn't a need considering that Drufo is not carcinogenic and the EPA has already approved the sale of the product.
Have there been any other consumers with the same condition as the plaintiff?
No.
Could the plaintiff not wearing protective gear have had an impact with how Drufo might have affected her if it was truly carcinogenic?
Yes.
And how so?
Like any fertilizer, you need to take protective measures, and Dakota Wears did not do that.
Does your label clearly state to wear protective gear?
Yes.
And did you take all the proper precautions to ensure consumer safety?
Yes, we took every precaution to ensure our users' safety.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor, may I proceed?
You may, thank you.
Ms. Doncourt, you're the Chief Executive Officer of Lush Fertilizer, Inc., correct?
I am.
And you have been CEO of Lush Fertilizer since 2000?
Yes, I have.
When you took over as CEO, Lush Fertilizer was an unknown producer of fertilizers, right?
Yes.
And now Lush Fertilizer is one of the world's largest suppliers of yard and commercial fertilizers?
Yes, while being environmentally conscious.
Ms. Doncourt, you work day and night to make Lush Fertilizer the profitable company that it is today, right?
Yes, I did.
And you make more than enough money as Lush Fertilizer's CEO to take care of yourself?
Yes, and take care of our environment and making sure our products are safe.
Do you also make more than enough money to take care of your new spouse?
Yes.
Ms. Doncourt, I'd like to talk to you about Lush Fertilizer's decision not to bake any of its products. You'd agree that baking removes any risk that your fertilizer is carcinogenic?
If there were any risk that our fertilizer was carcinogenic, then baking would have removed it, but ours does not have any risk.
Ms. Doncourt, was that a yes or a no to my question?
What was the question again?
You'd agree that baking removes any and all risk that your fertilizer could be carcinogenic.
Yes, if there were any risks.
So then, although baking removes any risk that your fertilizer is carcinogenic, you decided not to bake any of Lush Fertilizer's products, right?
As I stated before, yes, we did choose not to bake it, but that was because our product was not carcinogenic and it was not dangerous.
Ms. Doncourt, besides it not being necessary, isn't it true that you decided not to bake Lush's products as a cost-saving measure?
Well, it would have been pointless to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars baking a product that was not dangerous to begin with.
Ms. Doncourt, I'm asking you a yes or no to my question.
Yes.
So you decided not to bake any of Lush Fertilizer's products because you thought it was too costly, right?
Objection asked and answered.
Response?
Your Honor, I'm just clarifying that the witness did decide not to bake because of a certain factor that plays into it, which leads into my next line of questioning.
Okay, any response to that?
She asked the same question twice, almost said the exact same as well about the costliness.
I tend to agree, but you can go ahead and ask your follow-up question. I think she's answered it sufficient for the jury. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Durst, may I ask that Your Honor, the witness and opposing counsel, that I can share Exhibit 8 to the screen for everybody to refer to?
You may, subject to it being admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Doncourt, do you recognize Exhibit 8?
All right. Yes, it is an amortization table that I made in 2004.
So this document shows Lush Fertilizer's anticipated profits from 2004 to 2014, right?
Yes, it does.
And you did create this document in your role as the CEO.
Yes, I created this document.
Is Exhibit 8 a fair and accurate version of Lush Fertilizer's anticipated profits from 2004 to 2014?
Yes, it would be accurate.
Your Honor, I'd like to move Exhibit 8 into evidence.
All right, any objection to Exhibit 8?
No objections, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 8 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Permission to publish to the jury?
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. So you created this table to determine what the cost would be of baking Lush Fertilizer's products, right?
Yes, I did.
And the third column shows Lush Fertilizer's net profits after deducting the cost of baking?
Yes, it looks like it does.
And by net profits, this means you're deducting the cost of doing business, including expenses and salaries, and this is everything left over, correct?
I'm sorry, I'm confused by your question.
When I say net profits that's left in that column, this means deducting the cost of doing business, including expenses and salaries, and this is all the money left over, correct?
Yes.
So then isn't it true that according to your own projections, Lush Fertilizer still would have been profitable every year, even after baking its fertilizers?
I wouldn't say we would have necessarily been profitable. See, if you look at the 2014 column, we would have lost over $2 million if we would have baked a product that was not even dangerous to begin with.
Mr. I asked a yes or no to my question. Isn't it true that according to your own projections, Lush Fertilizer still would have been profitable even after baking its fertilizers?
Yes, we would have still been profitable, but like I said, we would have lost money that was unnecessary.
So you estimated that Lush Fertilizer would make over $1 million in profits every year from 2004 to 2014, even after baking its fertilizer?
Where is that column? Sorry.
In the final column for estimated overall revenue loss, in the column for net profit, you estimated that Lush Fertilizer still would have made over $1 million in profits every year from 2004 to 2014, even after baking its fertilizer, correct?
Yes, we would have, but if you look at the estimated overall revenue loss, we would have lost $2 million.
So, Ms. Stoncourt, having over $1 million in net profit every year wasn't enough profit for you or your company?
No, it certainly was enough, but I just did not see the point in baking the fertilizer since it wasn't dangerous. So I
So
chose
you, so you thought that removing any risk if fertilizer was carcinogenic was simply overkill?
it was simply overkill because there was little to no risk in our fertilizer.
Ms. Doncourt, is that a yes or a no?
Yes.
But you never published these financial findings to the public, did you?
No, what company does?
I'm not asking about other companies, Ms. Doncourt. I'm asking if your company published these financial findings to the public.
Yes, we chose not to.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Doncourt, there is no risk in Drufo, correct?
No, there is not.
So is there even a need to bake Drufo?
There is no need to bake the fertilizer. There's no risk.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Ms. Doncourt. You can step down. And your next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense calls Skylar Weirs to the stand.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Weirs, just to remind you, you're still under oath.
Yes.
Please state your name and last for the court.
Skylar Weirs, Weirs.
And why are you in court today?
I am in court today because I am an investigative journalist. Not for almost a year, I've studied the link between Durfo and cancer.
And what is your relation to the plaintiff?
Me and Dakota Weirs are twins.
And do you have an education?
I chose to forego college, but let me tell you, I'm highly qualified to talk about Durfo.
And are you currently employed?
I am currently employed at Rationalist Magazine.
And what do you do for Rationalist Magazine?
I'm an investigative journalist.
What exactly is an investigative journalist?
So an investigative journalist is a journalist that researches a specific topic of interest for a month or a year.
And what kind of articles have you written?
Mainly different topics of science, but my most recent article has been about modern agriculture.
And what experience has this given you in the field of agritech?
It's given me many different experiences. It's just given me a lot of new information, and I've researched about Durafo from many different sources.
And how did you start researching Drufo?
My boss told me to write about Durafo.
How long have you studied modern agritech?
Nearly a year.
And when did you start researching it?
Before Dakota's case.
And how long have you been researching Drufo?
Nearly a year.
And what was your process of researching Drufo?
So I read many different companies' publications about Durafo, and then I also tracked down a wealth of information from the USDA and the NASDA.
And what did you learn while researching it?
I learned many different things, but a key factor is that there is less nitrogen needed for Durafo, and there's less nitrogen and pesticides needed than Durafo than other grass seed products. And that is just revolutionary in the agritech world.
Your Honor, motion to tender my witness as an expert in modern agritech.
All right, any objection or voir dire?
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like permission to perform a brief voir dire.
You may.
May I proceed?
You may.
Mr. Weirs, you work as a journalist, is that true?
That is correct.
And you do not hold any scientific degree.
I do not hold a scientific degree, but other than the USDA and the NSDA, I am probably the most qualified person to talk about Durafo.
So you don't have any scientific training?
No, I do not, but I have read publications by many agritech companies.
So you're relying on the articles you read as a journalist for your opinions today?
Yes.
Those are articles that were written by actual scientists?
Yes, but I have gotten them from many different resources.
So you're relying on their expertise for your opinion?
Yes, I am.
Your Honor, we renew the arguments raised in our motion in limine to preclude Mr. Weir's expert testimony. While we have no objection to Mr. Weir's talking about the agritech industry in general, we do object to him providing any opinions on the science behind how DRUFO works. The defendant has not shown that Mr. Weir's is qualified by knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education to provide any scientific opinions.
All right, any response?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, with regard to the request for expertise in referring to the pretrial ruling issued on November 1st, 2021, and considering the expertise testified here today by Mr. Weir, I do find that under Rule 702, his specialized knowledge in the area of modern agritech would be assisting the jury. So you can testify in that capacity, and I sustain the rest of the objection.
Okay. So, Mr. Weirs, what have you researched about GMO crops?
I researched the effectiveness of GMO crops in the technology. So the technology has increased crop yields over the past 20 years. And GM is not only safe, but it can even increase efficiency on some products as well.
And do you think there are any risks from modern agricultural products?
There are no risks. For example, pesticides and herbicides are poison. They do kill threats to weeds, but I do not think they have any risk to humans.
And what do you know about commercial pesticides?
There are well-known carcinogens such as nitrates, glyphosate, and arsenics.
And can you explain grass seed products?
So a modern grass seed product is designed to keep grass green, but also to kill the common weed.
And how is nitrogen a soluble substance?
So after a rainstorm, it soaks deep into the soil.
How are GM crops safe?
Technology is allowing us to find chemicals necessary to achieve optimum yield in different products.
And how do you think DRUFO is effective?
DRUFO is effective because you only need to put a small amount on the plant, which is not common. Other grassy products, you have to put a lot more of the fertilizer on the plant to be as effective as DRUFO.
And in your expert opinion, Mr. Wires, how often does DRUFO need to be sprayed?
Once or twice a year.
And why is it that DRUFO only needs to be sprayed only once or twice a year?
Because DRUFO, it stays on the plant longer than the average grass seed product, which is revolutionary. No other product does that.
And in what way do you think Lush Fertilizer is reducing the amount of nitrogen in their products from other companies?
So because you only need to spray it once or twice a year, it reduces the need to keep spraying the plant with nitrogen.
And do you think that the plaintiff could have developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma from other chemical uses?
Yes, I do. I believe Dakota Weirs developed non-Hodgkin's from past exposures to other companies' fertilizer.
That is all, Your Honor.
All right, cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor, may I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon, Mr. Weirs. You consider yourself an investigative journalist, true?
That is correct.
And you haven't just written about modern agriculture, have you?
I've written other articles.
So you've also written about UFOs?
In the past, correct.
What about flat earth theory?
In the past.
And you've written about anti-vax culture?
Yes, all these articles I've written in the past, and I have matured a lot from then in my writing career. I have gained new knowledge. So those are my past articles. I have transitioned and over to basing my information off of facts instead of theories.
That is yes, Mr. Weirs?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. You were here for the testimony of the plaintiff's expert, Dr. Casey Rogers, correct?
Can you restate that, please?
You were present today in the courtroom for the testimony of the plaintiff's expert, Dr. Casey Rogers?
Yes.
And you understand that Dr. Rogers has a PhD in agriculture from the University of California at Berkeley and a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and Chemistry from Colorado State University, correct?
Yes, but how does this relate to me?
I will proceed to extrapolate on that, but you understand that Dr. Rogers teaches courses on herbicide selectivity and action at University of California at Berkeley, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Mr. Weirs, you don't have a PhD in agriculture, do you?
No, but I have read many other publications of people that do, and I've been able to grab all those informations and just combine it into one big article. So I am highly qualified.
And you don't have a PhD in agricultural technology?
I do not know.
Nor do you have a PhD in any other subject?
No.
You don't teach
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Response?
He's already classified. There's no need to say it again.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may, go ahead.
Your Honor, I am laying the foundation for this witness's expertise in the field of agriculture and agritech in comparison to the plaintiff's witness. And I will proceed to explore the line of questioning.
Okay, any further response? Okay,
He's
so
already, sorry,
Go ahead.
he's already been classified. There's no need to expand on it further.
So Mr. Weirs has been qualified as an expert. It is fair to ask questions that may go towards the credibility of that expertise. So I'll allow that testimony and questioning to continue, noting that he has already been polled.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Mr. Weirs, you don't teach any courses in agriculture or otherwise?
No, but I write about them.
You don't have a master's degree in agriculture or agricultural technology?
No, but again, I do write about them from correct sources with true information.
Yes, I understand you write about them, Mr. Weirs, but you don't have a bachelor's degree in any of the subjects that you write about?
No.
So your opinions on agricultural technology are based solely on your work as a
I
journalist?
wouldn't call them opinions. I pull facts.
Is that a yes, Mr. Weirs?
Can you restate the question?
Your opinions on agricultural technology are based solely on your work as a journalist?
Again, they're not opinions.
Mr. Weirs, are you a scientist?
I am not.
Do you have any scientific training?
I do not.
So your opinions are based solely on the 1 year that you spent researching Drufo as a journalist?
Well, I did spend a year researching Durafo, but again, I pulled them from websites that had correct facts. So even though they're facts and I used them, they couldn't have been opinions.
Is that a yes or a no, Mr. Weirs?
Restate the question, please.
Your articles written about Drufo and Lush Fertilizer are based solely on the 1 year you spent researching Drufo as a journalist, not as a scientist.
That is true.
Yet you believe that this jury should give more weight to your opinions than to Dr. Rogers, correct?
I wouldn't call them opinions.
That was not the question I asked. Would you like me to restate the question?
Yes, please.
You believe that the jury today should give more weight to your opinions as a journalist and someone without a PhD or any scientific degree than to Dr. Rogers, correct?
Yes, I do.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Wise, have you grown from simply writing about your theories?
Oh, definitely. As a writer, I have grown from many different aspects.
And you've grown so far as to spend an entire year researching Drufo, correct?
That is correct.
And is it true that you looked at various reliable studies and Dr.?
Yes, I have looked at many different reliable studies to gather my information to write these stories on modern agritech, especially Durafo.
And Dr. Rogers only performed his and looked at no others?
Yes.
That is all, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Mr. Weirs, you are free to step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And your next witness?
Thank you, Your Honor. The defense calls Dr. Devin Williams to the stand.
All right. Dr. Williams, remind you are still under oath.
Hello, Dr. Williams. Please state your name and spell the last for the record.
Dr. Devin Williams, Williams.
Dr. Williams, where do you work?
I work at Lush Fertilizer as head of the Toxicology Research and Development Labs, as well as a member of the Ethics Committee, and I am a professor at the University of New Mexico of Pharmacy.
What are your duties at your place of employment?
At Lush Fertilizer, I currently oversee all the environmental impacts of our products, as well as interpret data sets to ensure that our products are safe and effective.
And where did you attend school?
Well, from undergrad through PhD, I attended Colorado State University in Fort Collins and the University of Utah.
What classes are you qualified to teach?
I'm qualified to teach forensic, occupational, environmental, and medicinal toxicology.
Do you have a resume?
Yes, I do.
Your Honor, do you have a clean and unmarked copy of Exhibit 9?
I do.
Dr. Devin Williams, do you have a clean and unmarked copy of Exhibit 9 available to you?
I do.
Dr. Williams, could you please identify what Exhibit 9 is?
It's a copy of my curriculum vitae.
Do you have the ability to change this document?
Yes.
Is this document updated?
Yes.
Is this document accurate?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, we offer Exhibit 9 into evidence as its authenticity has been stipulated.
All right, any objection to Exhibit 9?
No objections, Your Honor.
Exhibit 9 is admitted.
Do you have any board certifications?
Yes, I have certifications in clinical, forensic, and basic toxicology.
What type of published scientific studies have you conducted?
Well, I've published various different types of toxicology-related phenomenons, including but not limited to the forensic aspect of poison and ethanol exposure in mice.
Your Honor, at this time, pursuant to Rule 702, I tender this witness as an expert in the fields of forensic, clinical, environmental, and occupational toxicology, in addition to statistic analysis.
All right. Any objection or request for voir dire?
No objections, Your Honor.
All right. You will be entitled to testify as an expert in those areas of expertise.
Can you tell us why you're here today?
I'm here to disapprove the allegations against Lush Fertilizer that Drufo is carcinogenic and caused the plaintiff's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Dr. Williams, do you have any financial bias in this case?
Yes, I admit being an employee at Lush, I do.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Do you have other jobs and sources of income outside of Lush Fertilizer?
Yes, I do.
What other sources of income do you have?
Well, I'm a tenured assistant professor at the University of New Mexico Pharmacy, as well as a visiting professor at Colorado State University.
Are you entirely dependent on Lush for your income?
No.
As an employee of Lush, do you have an understanding on the workings of Drufo?
Yes, I do.
Can you explain to the court how Drufo works?
Of course. So Drufo binds the ingredients in its fertilizer onto the plant or grass in which it is sprayed upon.
Why did Lush Fertilizers decide to create Drufo?
Drufo was created to mitigate nitrate pollution.
And how does Drufo address nitrate pollution?
Well, Drufo binds the fertilizer ingredients upon the plant in which it is sprayed on, ensuring that less needs to be sprayed, so therefore less washes away into the soil, and this interrupts the nitrate pollution process known as eutrophication.
Has there been any resistance to using Drufo as a way to reduce nitrate pollution?
Yes. The EU, Liberia, Haiti all have restrictions against Drufo.
Is there a specific reason for these restrictions that you're aware of?
Yes, there is.
Is the reason for these restrictions related to cancer risks?
No, they are not.
Why is Drufo restricted in the EU?
Well, you see, due to the European Union's nitrate directive, there are no recorded lab results of a reduction in nitrates.
Does Drufo display the same nitrogen behaviors in nature?
No, it does not.
Why is this?
Well, regular fertilizers produce X amount of nitrates, and so does Drufo under lab conditions. However, the bacteria in lab conditions do not represent real-world environments.
Did Lush contest the EU's decision?
No, we did not.
Why did Lush let the decision on Drufo stand?
Well, when the EU came out with their regulations, then we were just starting out as a brand new company and did not have the ability to contest. But with my department's current study, we hypothesized that Drufo will be regulated in the EU in the future.
So when Drufo was found in violation of federal laws in the EU, were products containing it immediately removed from sale?
Oh, absolutely.
Other than the EU's restrictions, are there other protests of the sale of Drufo?
Yes, Dr. Rogers' study.
Are there any issues with this study?
Yes, there are.
What problems are present in this study?
Well, you see, the fundamental issue with Dr. Rogers' study is that there are multiple variables. She examined 3 different groups of people with vastly different lifestyles and vastly different environments. A more valid study would have conducted of farmers who used Drufo compared to farmers who did not use Drufo and other fertilizers to isolate the variable being tested.
Has Dr. Rogers' study been peer-reviewed or even replicated?
No, it has not.
Why is peer review and experiment replication important?
Well, peer review is important to eliminate any bias in science. It allows others to analyze the results of the experiment to ensure that the scientific method was used to eliminate the bias. And replicating is important to help as it determines whether an experiment was simply an outlier to a larger data set.
And have you reached any conclusion relating to the plaintiff's claims or Dr. Rogers' conclusions?
Yes, we've concluded that Drufo is non-carcinogenic.
How did you come to this conclusion?
We interpreted the data sets and it was consistent that users of Drufo did not have elevated risk to developing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma compared to users of other fertilizers.
Why did you use data sets to help prove Drufo's safety instead of a study?
Well, data sets help us eliminate bias, outliers, and random element in science.
In your expert opinion, do you believe Drufo caused the plaintiff's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
I'm confident that Drufo did not cause the plaintiff's disease.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Cross-examination?
May I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon, Dr. Williams.
Good afternoon.
You work for Lush Fertilizer, correct?
Yes, I've worked there for roughly a decade.
And they pay for your salary, true?
Yes, but I am not entirely dependent on Lush.
Dr. Williams, Lush Fertilizer does not use Drufo in all of its products. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. We have multiple products.
Dr. Williams, Drufo is banned in France, isn't it?
Yes, along with the EU, Haiti, Liberia, Congo, but not due to risk of being carcinogenic.
And in fact, Drufo isn't just banned in France, it's actually banned in the entire European Union. And with that being said, you are currently working on a study to submit to the EU so they will reconsider the ban. Is that right?
Yes, we hypothesize.
Objection, compound question. The opposing counsel included two different questions in his question.
Why don't you restate your question, Mr. O'Con?
Yes, Your Honor. And with the Drufo ban being banned in the not just in France, but in the entire European Union, you're currently working on a study to submit to the EU so they will reconsider the ban. Is this right?
Yes, we hypothesize with our study will be regulated in Drufo in the future.
Isn't it true that if this jury were to find out that Drufo causes cancer, it would create a whole host of new bureaucratic roadblocks with the EU?
Yes, that is correct.
And in fact, that would prevent Lush Fertilizer from selling their products containing Drufo to a significant percentage of the global market, right?
Yes, however, we have discovered that Drufo is non-carcinogenic.
A simple yes or no.
Yes.
So, Dr. Williams, it's fair to say that you have financial bias in the outcome of this case. True?
Objection asked and answered.
Response?
Your Honor, I was simply just, the defense opened the door to questions, or not questions, but opinions of financial bias in this case.
Okay. Any further response?
Yes, Your Honor. I asked almost this exact question as the beginning of the direct. This witness has already established that they have financial bias in this case. There's no need to continue this line of questioning.
If I may respond, Your Honor.
Yeah.
I am simply just clarifying Dr. Williams' answer.
Okay. Well, this is cross-examination and it is appropriate to re-ask questions under the scope of direct. However, I believe you already talked about some financial connectivity regarding her income and that bias. So once you wrap up that line of questioning, you can move forward on your next line.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Williams, you were here for the testimony of the plaintiff's expert, Dr. Casey Rogers, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
You understand that Dr. Rogers has a PhD in agriculture and entomology from the University of California at Berkeley and a Bachelor of Science in agriculture and chemistry from Colorado State University, right?
Yes, I'm aware.
And you understand that Dr. Rogers teaches courses in herbicide selectivity and action at University of California at Berkeley, correct?
Yes, I am aware.
And you understand that Dr. Rogers does not work for Lush Fertilizer, yes?
Yes.
But you do work for Lush Fertilizer, right?
Yes, I do. I've worked there for about a decade.
And yet you believe that this jury should give more weight to your opinions than to Dr. Rogers, correct?
Well, I've worked a lot more closely with the effects of Drufo, being that my company developed the product.
Dr. Williams, that did not answer my question.
Objection, unfair prejudice. This is influencing the jury's opinion on either one of the witnesses, which my witness cannot speak to.
Response?
Dr. Williams did not answer my question on whether the jury should give more weight to Dr. Williams' opinions than to Dr. Rogers.
Dr. Williams is not allowed to speak on what the jury should think.
All right. So to the extent the jury will be given instructions in the law, they must follow, and they will weigh and balance the credibility, weight, and veracity of each witness. So these are competing experts, and they can opine upon the other's expertise, and the jury then can decide what weight to give it. So I'll overrule the objection, and you can proceed forward.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Williams, one of your criticisms of Dr. Rogers' study is that it has not been replicated. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And peer replication is very important, as it helps to determine whether an experiment was simply an outlier to a larger data set.
And as the lead of the toxicology research and development labs at Lush Fertilizer, you could have ordered the study to be replicated under the conditions that you have suggested, true?
Well, at my labs, what we do is we determine the different data sets.
But you did. My apologies.
I'm sorry. No, please continue.
But you haven't ordered that study, have you?
No, I have not.
Dr. Williams, I want to talk about the testimony that you haven't given today. Dr. Williams, today in this courtroom, you can't tell the jury definitely that Drufo does not cause cancer, true?
Well, we've discovered that Drufo is not carcinogenic.
One more question, Dr. Williams. Who is your employer?
Well, Lush Fertilizer is my employer. However, I have various other jobs, such as a professor at the University of New Mexico and a visiting professor at Colorado State University.
Dr. Williams, is that a yes or a no? Or, sorry, I'm sorry. No further questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Dr. Williams, did removing Drufo from sale in the EU cost Lush extra money as they had to create new products?
Yes, it did.
So in the EU, Lush valued safety over the cost of production?
Yes, we did.
And before coming into court today, had you ever seen Dr. Rogers' study?
No, I have not.
So you would not have been able to call for a reproduction of that study before today, correct?
No, I have not. I had no idea it existed.
Thank you. That is all.
All right. Thank you. Dr. Williams, you can step down.
Thank you.
Do you have any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor. The defense rests.
All right. And plaintiff, did you have any rebuttal? There being no rebuttal, let's allow you to gather your notes and we'll proceed to closing arguments. And plaintiff, let me know when you're ready to proceed.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Your Honor, members of the jury, Today, you have heard evidence from both the plaintiff and the defendant attempting to prove Lush Fertilizer is liable. But at its heart, this case is about a high school kid whose dreams were destroyed when he developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma as a result of exposure to Lush Fertilizer. As the plaintiff, it was our job to prove the defendant was negligent and caused Mr. Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma by a preponderance of the evidence, meaning more likely true than not. We submit that we have met our burden. I'd like to draw your attention to instructions 2 and 3, which state that we can prove to you that Lush was negligent either by failing to exercise reasonable care to make sure its product was safe, or by proving that Lush knew its product was harmful and failed to adequately warn its consumers. We met our burden by calling 3 witnesses. First, you heard from my client, Dakota Weirs, who spends his free time volunteering at local homeless shelters and participating in extracurricular activities. But what truly drives him has always been his passion for piano. He has been playing since he was 7 years old, and he was so talented that he secured a full scholarship to Juilliard. But the debilitating illness he developed as a result of Lush's negligence causes him constant pain and fatigue and makes it impossible for him to sit at the piano for more than a few minutes at a time. Mr. Weirs has had everything taken from him, all because he wanted to work a job to save for a future he may never get. Second, you heard from Carson Durst, who worked for years as a product development engineer on Lush's research and development team and was a first-hand witness to its immoral and unethical behavior. Tests performed at Lush revealed that Drufo could contain a carcinogen and could be linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but Lush Fertilizer continually ignored these risks to maximize its profits. Finally, you heard from Dr. Casey Rogers, an expert in the field of agriculture who has spent years working to understand the harmful effects of prolonged exposure to Drufo. He spoke to the devastating consequences of rushing a product to the market without ensuring its safety. His study was executed over the span of many years, and its results are clear. Using Lush Fertilizer exponentially increases the risks of developing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. These witnesses alone established by a preponderance of the evidence that Lush Fertilizer was negligent and is liable for my client's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Lush Fertilizer also called 3 witnesses today, none of whom provided a plausible defense or justification for why it didn't bake its products or include a proper warning label. You heard first from Blake Doncourt, who testified that Lush made a conscious decision not to bake its fertilizer. You saw Exhibit 8, which showed that Lush Fertilizer still would have made over $1 million in profits each year, even if it had baked its fertilizer to remove any risk that it was carcinogenic. Ms. Doncourt told you that Lush refused to bake its products because doing so would have been simply overkill. Second, you heard from Skylar Weirs, whose testimony was baseless at best and dangerously unreliable at worst. Mr. Weirs testified that with the same supposed expertise that he has in the other topics he's devoted his time to, like flat earth theory and UFOs, Mr. Weirs has no relevant credentials and he relied on unverifiable research. Lastly, you heard from Dr. Devin Williams, who explicitly admitted that she has a financial bias in the outcome of this case. She could not tell you that Drufo is not carcinogenic because she does not know that to be true herself. Dr. Williams' entire testimony today was a cop-out, an avoidance of the question at hand. All of the defense witnesses testified in the name of profiteering off of a company that continues to exploit its consumers, but their testimonies did nothing to dismantle the ironclad proof that Lush Fertilizer is responsible for my client's life-altering disease and should have included an appropriate warning on its label. We have met our burden and we ask you to find Lush Fertilizer liable. You will now hear from the defense. Listen closely and pay attention to whether Lush's attorney answers any of our unresolved questions and whether they take any responsibility for its actions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Closing on behalf of defendant.
Yes, Your Honor, if it may please the court.
Okay.
Let me begin with jury instructions 2 and 8. These instructions say that if the plaintiff used the product in any way the defendant did not expect, or if the plaintiff failed to do something that a reasonably careful person would do, a non-liable verdict must be passed. This case comes down to these jury instructions. Lush Fertilizer placed a warning label on the product, showing they expected any reasonable person to use some sort of protection. That label included the words hazards and safety, 2 words that denote danger to any reasonable person. In addition, the plaintiff acted unreasonably. The plaintiff was working with industrial grade chemicals. The plaintiff was warned of their effects verbally by his boss. The plaintiff knew there were hazards, whether long or short term, but yet the plaintiff chose not to wear a mask. The plaintiff chose to take responsibility, chose to be negligent, and to ignore the warnings they were given. Then the prosecution today attempted to say that Lush was negligent through the firing of an incompetent employee and the study performed outside of the scientific method. They attempted to prove that a purportedly honest employee was fired as a cover-up. This is simply false. Carson Durst was a poor employee from the beginning. His performance reports were always poor. That was not changed by his purported reports on the validity of Drufo. Carson Durst has no evidence showing his performance reports worsened. All he has is resentment for an old friend turned boss who fired him due to his incompetence. He has no way of knowing that her study was ignored. All he has is a vaguely worded email that may have excluded mention of her study because it was an outlier. Lush is a large multinational company. There is no way for every study to make it into briefs. In addition to this, Carson Durst said in his testimony that testing Drufo on humans would be unethical. But then what was the very next witness called by the plaintiff? An immoral doctor who did exactly that. The plaintiff can't even seem to agree on the morals of their own witness. So how can they ask you, the jury, to trust them and their witnesses? Once again, they have failed to prove beyond a preponderance of evidence that Lush was aware of any possible carcinogens in Drufo, especially since they haven't proved there are carcinogens in the first place. They attempted to prove the carcinogenic qualities of Drufo through a faulty study. A study that had too many variables to be valid. A study that included those that work with industrial grade chemicals on farm professional levels and those that spray flowers as a pastime in the same group of exposure. Dr. Rogers did not analyze the environment of his test subjects. They do not have the research necessary to prove that the increase in risk falls on Drufo. It could have fallen on any common environmental factors in working with those chemicals. In fact, Dr. Rogers admitted it himself. He admitted on the stand today that his study cannot prove beyond a preponderance of evidence that Drufo is carcinogenic. And if Drufo is not proved as carcinogenic, then Lush cannot be liable. Then this study tried to disguise itself as hard evidence, when in reality, all it can prove is a loose correlation, not even causation. They failed to prove, once again, beyond a preponderance of evidence that Drufo has a direct causal relationship with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Drufo is not carcinogenic, so it does not need to be baked. That is the defense's addressment to the plaintiff's question of why it wasn't baked. There is no evidence in this case proving Drufo to be carcinogenic, so there was no necessity for the product to be baked. In the past, Lush has sacrificed its profit by selling Drufo in the EU in favor of safety. They changed their product for safety. Lush is a company, and the motive of a company is to make effective and safe products that turn a profit. Yet in the past, they have favored safety over that, so there is no reason to believe they haven't done it again. Lush is a company today that has fallen under the attack from other agricultural companies for developing a better product. That has brought slander upon Drufo, slander that has brought Drufo to the plaintiff's attention, slander that has brought this lawsuit, slander that is currently attacking Lush and hindering their ability to release a fertilizer that prevents pollution, slander that asks you, the jury, to ignore the most important part of this case. The plaintiff did not wear a mask. The plaintiff was warned and chose not to protect himself. The plaintiff admitted to negligence. In his testimony, the very first response to one of the questions, when asked if he believed that he held any responsibility, he said most of the responsibility is on Lush. Most. The plaintiff admitted to negligence on the stand in front of the jury. This leaves you, the jury, no chance but to vote against any liability on the plaintiff's part as decreed in jury instruction 9. The plaintiff did not wear a mask, and the plaintiff admitted to negligence. Any reasonable person would know working out industrial grade chemicals is dangerous. Any reasonable person spraying chemicals would wear a mask. The plaintiff was negligent. The plaintiff admitted it. The product was safe. Those are the only facts that were proven today, and those are the only things that matter in this case. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I believe plaintiff reserved a rebuttal time for closing. You may have a final word.
Thank you, Your Honor. Instead of coming up here and accepting responsibility for its actions, Lush Fertilizer tried to have you believe that Dakota Weirs, a high school kid, is responsible for his own cancer. When you return to the jury room to deliberate, look closely at Exhibit 1, the label Lush Fertilizer used on its product. When you do so, examine the ethics of lying by omission. Nowhere on this label does it state the hazards that the defendant so claims are present. Nowhere does it state that anything bad may happen upon exposure to Drufo. Nowhere on this label does it say what Lush knew about its product, that it may cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I ask, how can the innocent person who used it unknowingly be put at fault? Study after study has revealed the dangers of exposure to Drufo, yet Lush has continued to fail to take responsibility for consumer safety in order to put them in a position for ultimate monetary gain. Ladies and gentlemen, we have seen today more than enough evidence that Lush Fertilizer is singularly responsible for my client's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We request that you hold Lush Fertilizer responsible for its actions and ensure it cannot infringe upon the safety of any other consumer, with a verdict for the plaintiff. Thank you.
Your Honor, you are still muted.
Thank you. I said we're going to turn this over to the jury now, and congratulations for your presentation. I usually say when I leave my mute button on that those are the most important words I just said. I'm sorry you didn't get to hear them. Let's see all the participants on the screen. And I'm going to talk briefly, Mr. Shea, why I think the panel is going to do their scoring, correct?
Yeah, Judge, if the panel, when you have your scores submitted, either through the system or Ms. Ashen, through the accommodation that you worked out with Laura earlier today, if you can please send me something in the text or come on and wave at me to let me know that your scores are complete so that we can get that submitted and get ready to go. But Judge Hurst, we're happy to hear from you in terms of what you saw today. Thanks.
All right. And we'll hear from the panelists in a moment. They all have their opinions as well. So first of all, congratulations. You made it through the weekend. The other thing I'll tell you is I'm very disappointed. I'm disappointed that I didn't get to see 2 more hours of you present your case, because I think both teams did an incredible job today. I was very, very impressed. I can tell you that the job that I do is about 50 to 60% jury trials now, and the other part is litigation in my courtroom. And I wish you guys were the lawyers doing the cases in front of me, because they would be far more presentable and far more enjoyable. And I really think you did a great job. So I really have no negative comments. There are a couple of things I would tell you that you might use in the future when you advance to the next level, which I hope you both do. When you're doing cross-examination, a simple yes or no, or yes or no will suffice. That's a great way to tell that witness what you're going to do. Now, I know in time frames, the other side's being tricky and going to give you a yes, but 2 more sentences, right? It is okay for you to say as you get further in the competition, Your Honor, I'd ask you just to instruct the witness to say yes or no. That's okay, right? Because you have the right to do that under cross-examination. You're controlling that examination. So think about it. The judge may or may not grant it, but that's okay. Watch out for being argumentative in counsel. If opposing counsel is starting to ask argumentative questions, go ahead and object. And you can use the objection of argumentative. That does 2 things. 1, it stops the questioning. 2, it might frustrate your opponent a little bit. But 3, it's not appropriate to have argumentative questions, right? The goal is to have that witness answer in a manner that is going to hurt the other side. So think about that as you go forward. The other thing is, some of my rulings, if this was a real case, would not have probably been the same. The goal, of course, was to try and let some of these exhibits and you to proceed. And don't get frustrated on the rulings of the judge. We're just humans. We try to do the best we can in that 10 seconds where we have to decide on an objection. But don't be afraid to reattack it or attack it in a different manner. And it's okay to come back and try and get that exhibit in or to challenge that objection further. Just don't become argumentative, okay? Otherwise, I thought you did an excellent job. I'll say better than the one I saw this morning. And I really think that the experience is helping you guys as you go forward. So Do you have any questions for me before I turn it over? Looks like Miss Miller might be ready. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Miss Miller, or excuse me, Miss Smith, I apologize.
Judge, let's wait until all of the
Oh,
scoring panelists have submitted their scores before anybody gives contact or gives comments. So with respect to that, I see that Miss Ashen made a wave. Miss Smith and Miss Nance, have you submitted your score updates?
Okay.
All right.
Mine are
Great.
All right. You guys can have at 'em.
Well, I thought you guys did such a good job. I was really, really impressed. I think focusing on cross as well, be careful of open-ended questions. I heard a few, and I was like, don't do that. But other than that, I can't believe how much work you guys put into this. It was really incredible. And just like the judge said, I wish that I had some of you against me in court because you guys were all so professional with one another, and it was really a delight to watch and hear.
Thank you.
I'd like to second what Miss Smith said. Y'all were amazing. I would really look forward to working with you if I were ever to work with any of you in court, or either with opposing counsel or together. You guys did amazing.
And Miss Ashen, who has a lot of experience in mock trial.
I want to preface what I'm going to say by, I was thinking of my comments and I had to double check and make sure I was judging. You guys are in high school, right? Good night. If y'all don't keep doing this, it's going to be a crime. All right. You are what His Honor said to start out with. Don't stop. Please keep going. So with that, again, maybe a steak dinner with cheesecake for your witnesses. Your witnesses did you proud, particularly your two doctors, because they knew their stuff and they didn't fight back at you. And I did plaintiff's personal injury for, 37 years as a trial lawyer. And Ms. Zarin, is it pronounced? Where are you, ma'am? Yeah. You're what we call in my neck of the woods a hero, because what you did was you had to take on a plaintiff, okay? A sympathetic, sick with cancer plaintiff. That is one of the most frightening things you have to do. And it's who presented the plaintiff? Jasmine, is it? Did a nice job on that. If you've got so much, dial it back just a little bit. Be careful about attacking such a sympathetic plaintiff, but that's one of the hardest things to do. You are to be warmly congratulated. And plaintiff, well done. I felt real awful for you. You made me feel sad. So the plaintiff had a hero on their team, and both teams, the way you guys use your witnesses, brilliant. So when you're going on and somebody's qualifying their witness and somebody else says, hey, it's all right. No, we'll stipulate. Don't let them do it. Say, thank you for that stipulation that my person's an expert. I want the jury to hear everything about it, because you guys worked really hard and set them up like that. So that was very good too. I'm not a real big fan of limiting people to yes or no, because one of I think it might have been Danielle, that was a real good example of how you don't have to limit them to yes or no. Let them go a little bit and then let them pay the line out and snap it back. You guys were, and just because I picked out one person that I said was a hero, I've had to cross people that were really hurt or injured or something. That's really hard to do. And you feel like a real rat, and it's an art form. It's an art form. And you always try and be honorable and kind. And that's what you all are. So I'm sorry I went on, but I was really impressed, you guys. I had to go and get the little thing out and it said mock trial high school. High school. Well done. Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome. I agree. And I think Mr. Aguirre, who played Dakota, and Ms. Frick, who played Don Court, kind of the two primary witnesses for each side. I thought you guys were awesome. You both played your characters great. And Ms. Ashton had mentioned it in the last session we had. The witnesses really can help win the competition and the way that the case flows. And so I wanted to give you kudos for that. The other thing I wanted to thank you for was being polite. Long now was the days when you beat up witnesses on the stand, Perry Mason type of stuff, which you guys probably don't even know what I'm talking about. But it's okay to be polite and treat other with respect in the courtroom, because you're just trying to get your evidence out. And you can do that in a respectful way. And as you move forward, you may be presenting to actual Supreme Court justices and appeal court judges and people who do this a lot. Make sure you thank them at the closing of your closing and at the beginning of your opening. As an example, when I have 12 jurors here and they're stuck here for a week, I think it's important you thank them for their service and being here and listening to your case. So maybe wrap that in. In this case, you've got 3 panelists and a judge, but it's always nice to wrap it up with thank you for giving attention to this matter and you appreciate the work they did. And those would be my parting comments. I would turn it over to Mr. Shea, who's an excellent litigator as well, and he might have some comments for you to wrap up the case. And I want to thank you all for the privilege of being your judge today.
Well, I'll tell you all did a great job. This is my 4th session that I've watched. So, it's fun to watch sort of. I think I've seen a couple of your teams, which is obviously why I'm not a scoring panelist. I've seen a couple of your teams at different junctures, different sides and things like that. So you're all doing great with respect to this. It definitely showed that, you guys put in a lot of work. I can tell you that about 30 years ago, about 30 years ago was my first Colorado high school mock trial, my sophomore year in college or in high school. So I've definitely done it. And so, it's a path, keep following it. If it's something that you're interested in, and if you love this process, do it. Witnesses be attorneys, attorneys be witnesses, because it's fun to get to experience all of the facets of this. So thank you all so much for this weekend and all the work that you've put in. Scoring panelists, thank you obviously for coming in. And I know a lot of you have volunteered for a couple of these, and that's great. And Judge Hurst, it's always great to get your feedback and your wisdom with respect to this. So thank you as well. In terms of what you all are going
to. Timekeepers. I'm sorry, Mr. Shake.
Oh, of course, the timekeepers.
2 timekeepers that I've seen today.
And funny enough, like poor timekeepers getting booted out of rooms and me having to figure out how to get you back in really quick. And I was like, oh, timekeeper out. What am I doing here? So, I'm glad you all were able to, to do that on the fly and keep your folks where they needed to be in terms of that. So appreciate that as well. We have to use this courtroom for the announcements and things like that. So you guys can all sign off from this room. It's going to be live and probably everybody will be tuned into it here in a little bit. So the YouTube channel will probably be the place to go for all of you after that, as opposed to staying in this room, because that'll just be a mess. But so I'll go ahead and keep this room open and everyone can sign off. And then I guess your coaches will have instructions about whether folks are joining this room or whether we're watching YouTube. And we'll have Magistrate Stewart in here in a little while to go ahead and do the rest of that stuff. So thank you all.
Thank you
I
so
just want
much.
to say thank you and good job, everybody. And thank you, Ms. Ashton.
Thank you. Good luck, everyone.
Good luck.
All right. Nice to see you, Aaron. Take care.
Good to see you.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Hey, Donna,
Yes.
do I need to stop the live streaming?
No, I think go ahead and let it keep live streaming so that people can watch.
Okay.
From the live stream.
Okay, will do. But I.
Yeah. Geez, I look like crap today.
You're funny.
Way to keep our slides.
Oh, there you are. All right, good afternoon, everybody. I don't know how I'm hoping we've got everybody. It's hard for me to say, but we had asked the students to pop into courtroom 1 so that if you win when you win something, you can put your face on the screen and we can all give you a proper congratulations. And then I'm hoping that everybody else is watching through the live stream because we do still have that up and running. We just, bandwidth issues, but we want to make sure that we can appropriately recognize everybody. So I want to thank everybody, volunteers. I know the volunteers didn't stick around, but obviously we couldn't do it without them, coaches and the students as well. Virtual is never easy, but I think that we navigated a little better this year than last year. From what I saw, because I popped into a couple of the rounds, you all did a phenomenal job as always, and I want to congratulate you. I feel weird talking to a bunch of black boxes, but hopefully next year we will be back to being in person and we can have the proper celebrations. I'm going to turn things, I guess I didn't introduce us, so not everybody knows us. My name is Donna Stewart. I'm a magistrate in Douglas County. Teresa and I have been running this competition. We believe this is our 12th year, and we really enjoy doing this, and we're glad that you're all able to participate. I'm going to turn things over to you, Teresa.
Thank you. I'm Teresa Wilkins. I'm an attorney. So I think we're just going to kind of get right into it. I'm going to be announcing the awards for Best Attorney. Donna is going to be announcing the awards for Best Witness. I will announce who won the Professionalism Award, and then we'll move on to the 2 teams advancing to state. Sound good, Donna?
Yep, and if you did win something and you're on here, please show us your face. All right, go ahead.
Okay, and when I announce Best Attorney, I'm going to get the student name and the team name. I don't have the team names associated with the schools. So the first award for Best Attorney is Ella Simons, Team Lilac.
Yay!
Yay! I don't know if she's on here.
I don't either.
The second award for Best Attorney goes to Kitty Wright from Team Lilac.
Yay!
The third award for Best Attorney goes to Alina Harper, Team Tulip.
Elena?
Oh, I see people. The fourth award for Best Attorney goes to Mallory Camberos from Team Daffodil. Good job. The fifth award for Best Attorney goes to Sasha Latak from Team Columbine. And I apologize if I'm not saying these right. Good job. The sixth award for Best Attorney goes to Emma Eastland from Team Violet. The seventh award for Best Attorney goes to Katie Greenfield, Team Rhodes. The eighth award for Best Attorney goes to Diane Nair from Team Columbine. The ninth award for Best Attorney goes to Emily Perry from Team Carnation. And the 10th award for Best Attorney goes to Braden Tours from Team Tulip. Congratulations, everyone. Great job.
And if we didn't say this, we will be sending you out certificates, so you will get that recognition.
Yes, they might take a couple of weeks to get done because we can't complete them virtually. So we will get them to you and we will get them out in the mail.
All right, next we're going to do Best Witness. So we've got Mike Schuler from Team Carnation. Right, we have Ella Simons from Team Lilac. Colin Ingram from Team Tulip.
Good job, guys.
Good job. Diane Nair from Team Columbine. Yeah. Oh, she's probably in. Yeah. Peter Heitman from Team Rose. Anna Nordlander, also from Team Rose. Team Rose. Jordan Bard from Columbine. Anna Benevento from Team Carnation. Good job. Ava Neal from Team Tulip. Good job. And Sasha Ladek from Team Columbine. All right, let's everybody give a round of applause for our best witnesses.
Yay! So Donna and I were mentioning before we came on here that the thing we probably miss the most is the award ceremony, because there's so much energy and excitement in that room. So we really miss all of your faces. So we're really looking forward to next year when, knock on wood, it will be in person. Next up is the Team Professionalism Award. So this award is very important. It talks about how you treat one another, and it's probably more important than the rules of evidence, your presentation of evidence, your direct examinations, your opening statements. It's how you act, your demeanor, your courtesy towards the courtroom, the judge, the staff, the other attorneys, the witnesses. And I know at least one judge, I was peeking in on some of the courtrooms during the competition, and at least one judge was saying that he couldn't believe how absolutely professional and kind and courteous. I don't remember the judge. I don't remember the round or the courtroom. But it was so great to hear. Just because as attorneys, I mean, we have a lot of stress coming at us, not just from our cases, but personal lives. You know, life gets in the way sometimes. But to be kind and professional to one another, it really does bring satisfaction to what we do. So I will stop going on. This one's true to my heart. So the team that receives the Professionalism Award this year is Team Tulip from Mountain Vista.
And if you all are on here, show your faces.
Let's see you, Tulip.
Yes.
Great job.
Great job.
And I think I was actually in the courtroom when the judge was talking to all of you. So all of you look very familiar. You should be very proud of yourselves, because that's an amazing award to receive. So,
all right. Next, we're going to announce the two winning teams, and when we, or not the winning teams, but the two advancing teams, I should say. So when we announce your team, if you are on here again, please show us your smiling faces.
You think they really want to hear this part, or?
It's kind of more fun to ask that when we can see them.
I know. I can't see them sweat right now. It's not as fun.
I know.
Okay, we'll just move on to it.
All right.
So team number 2 advancing to state is Team Rose from Valor.
Yay!
Are all of you on here or not on here?
I think they might be watching through the live stream.
Hello, if you're watching live stream.
And then the number 1 team moving on is Team Violet from Ponderosa. Yay! All right. Well, that was anticlimactic.
We hope that you all had a wonderful time competing, and it was a good experience for all of you. And for those of you who are not seniors, we hope to see you again next year.
Yes, thank you all.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.